जीवन पूर्ण बनेगा ध्यान कर लो जीवन पूर्ण बनेगा अनुभव कर लो जीवन पूर्ण बनेगा इस मिनट बस ध्यान कर लो जीवन पूर्ण बनेगा सुबह शाम बस ध्यान कर लो जीवन पूर्ण बनेगा आसन प्राणायाम कर लो जीवन पूर्ण बनेगा अनुभव कर लो जीवन पूर्ण बनेगा अवधि कर लो सबकी आत्मा शांति का सागर सबकी आत्मा आनंद का सागर सबकी आत्मा शांति का सागर सबकी आत्मा ज्ञान का सबकी आत्मा ज्ञान का सागर है सबकी आत्मा शक्ति का सागर है सागर है सागर है अनुभव कर लो जीवन
जय गुरुदेव
जीवन पूर्ण बनेगा सुबह शाम बस ध्यान कर लो जीवन पूर्ण बनेगा आसन प्राणायाम कर लो जीवन पूर्ण बनेगा अवधि ध्यान कर लो जीवन पूर्ण बनेगा अनुभव कर लो जीवन पूर्ण बनेगा अवधि ध्यान कर लो
Madhavi, can we continue with this song or we have another song? We are on Ramprakash TV now.
Shall we continue with this song once again, Himaji?
Yeah.
Okay.
Shall I play? Otherwise, there is Guru Puja also.
Yes, yes, Sunita, you can.
Shall I? But I am not given the host. That's why I was waiting actually. Hello? Madhvi?
Okay. Okay. Till you are given the co-host, right? I will just play this once again.
I have given one, shared one song and prayer. No, you have to play that one.
Yeah, this is that itself.
Then continue with that only.
Madhavi, continue, please.
Continue with the same thing from there. 6 minutes is there, is it actually? Madhvi, increase the volume and
जीवन पूर्ण बनेगा ध्यान कर लो जीवन पूर्ण बनेगा अनुभव कर लो जीवन पूर्ण बनेगा इस मिनट बस ध्यान कर लो, जीवन पूर्ण बनेगा। सुबह शाम बस ध्यान कर लो, जीवन पूर्ण बनेगा। आसन प्राणायाम कर लो, जीवन पूर्ण बनेगा। अनुभव कर लो, अनुभव कर लो, जीवन पूर्ण बनेगा। अवधि कर लो, सबकी आत्मा शांति का सबकी आत्मा आनंद का सबकी आत्मा शांति का सबकी आत्मा ज्ञान का सबकी आत्मा ज्ञान का सागर है। सबकी आत्मा शक्ति का सागर है, सागर है, सागर है। अनुभव कर लो, अनुभव कर लो, जीवन पूर्ण बनेगा। बस ध्यान कर लो, जीवन पूर्ण बनेगा। सुबह शाम बस ध्यान कर लो, जीवन पूर्ण बनेगा। आसन प्राणायाम कर लो, जीवन पूर्ण बनेगा। अवधि ध्यान कर लो, जीवन पूर्ण बनेगा। अनुभव कर लो, अनुभव कर लो, जीवन पूर्ण बनेगा। अवधि ध्यान कर लो। साक्षात् परम ब्रह्म तस्मै श्री गुरवे नमः। शंकरं शंकराचार्यं केशवं वादिराजं भाष्यकृतौ वन्दे भगवन्तौ पुनः
Can we stop now, Madhuri?
Yes. Jai Gurudev. Jai Gurudev. Welcome all of you to our Gita session. Before we start, I think the Vedic Pandits have not yet joined. Yes, they have joined. So, shall we start with Sahana Vavatu? May I request the Vedic Pandits to start the chanting of Sahana Vavatu?
जय गुरुदेव दीदी।
Jai
Gurudev.
ओम शयनावतु शयनौ भुनक्तु सह वीरं करवावहै तेजस्विनावधेतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ओम शांति शांति शांति।
Jai Gurudev. We will now have the last class we have done. So we will be having the begin mala of verses 67 and 68 of chapter 2. So may I request the Vedic Pandits to recite verses 67 and 68 of chapter 2, please.
ओम श्री परमात्मने नमः। इंद्रियाणां विचरितां यन्मनोनुविधीयते ततस्य हरति प्रज्ञां वायुर्नावामिमां भसि तस्माद्यस्य महाबाहो नृगृहीतानि सर्वशः इन्द्रियाणीन्द्रियार्थेभ्यस्तस्य प्रज्ञा प्रतिष्ठिता। ओम।
Thank you. So the last session, we had a discussion on verses 65 through 68. So may I request Hemaji to kindly recapitulate the last week's class for us. Thank you, Hemaji.
Jai Gurudev. So, in the last session, we have studied these 4 shlokas, very beautiful shlokas. We have studied what grace is. In Sanskrit, it is called as prasad. That means Paramatma is pleased with us. One who is in the state of Sthita Prajna, he gains that grace, prasad, from Paramatma. And with this experience, we have noted that all suffering comes to an end. So this is the highest state of consciousness one can achieve in one's lifetime, the best and the highest. And with this, the intellect becomes firmly established in Atma. And now we know how to get there, of course, with transcendental meditation. But there is also something else we can do, and that is to listen to Vishnu Sahasranama. Vishnu Sahasranama has 1,000 names of Mahavishnu, and Mahavishnu is Brahman, Paramatma. So these 1,000 qualities of Mahavishnu are there in Vishnu Sahasranama. So when we listen to them, we are taking on those qualities into our awareness. And one of the names is Purna. So when we have grace, it is Purnatva. Bhagwan's Purnatva, fullness is what we have. And so that is just one example. When the word, the name Purna comes in Vishnu Sahasranama, we take on that quality. So it enhances our evolution. And like that, there are many other qualities that are there in Vishnu Sahasranama. And it is Maharishi's instruction that we listen to Vishnu Sahasranama 10 minutes twice daily after our program. And you can listen to it on Maharishi digital media. There's our Maharishi Vedic Pandits have recited, and it's very beautiful recitation. Actually, it is the best in the world. The recording had come out very, very beautifully. So that was the shloka. In 65 shloka, we have learned about grace. And then we have also seen what happens when one is not established in Atma, when one doesn't have steadiness of intellect. So then what happens when the mind and intellect are not steady? One cannot have peace, because the senses, they steal the intellect, and then intellect is going here and there. It is unsteady. So because of that, the mind is not settled. Mind is going in different directions. So the senses are not settled. So there cannot be peace. And without peace, there cannot be happiness. So I'll say in Hindi also about these two shlokas. यहाँ जीते हुए मन का लाभ कहा गया है. मन जीते जग जीत, गुरु नानक जी ने बोले थे और महर्षि जी ने दोहराया. क्योंकि मन और इंद्रियों के जीत नहीं हुई तो पुरुष में निश्चयात्मिका बुद्धि नहीं होती, और उस अयुक्त मनुष्य के अंतःकरण में अशांति होती है. जो आत्मा में स्थित नहीं है, उसका कोई विचार स्थिर नहीं होते. स्थिर विचार के बिना मनुष्य को शांति नहीं मिलती, और जिसको शांति नहीं है वह सुखी कैसे बन सकता है. इसका मतलब है जिसके पास शांति नहीं है वो सुख नहीं पा सकता है. And then in the last two shlokas, we have learned how the senses steal the intellect. The mind by nature wants greater happiness. For example, if you are studying for your math or physics test and it is so boring, and your mind automatically goes to your favorite song because it gives you more happiness, and then you get absorbed in it. And then the intellect loses the power of discrimination. That is, that you should be focusing on your studies because you have a test tomorrow, should not listen to the music, like that. So because one is losing the intellect is not functioning that way. Here it is said that the senses steal a man's intellect, just like a ship is carried away by the wind. And जब मनुष्य का बुद्धि स्थिर नहीं है, इंद्रियां उस अयुक्त पुरुष की बुद्धि को हर लेती है. जैसे कि आप फिजिक्स टेस्ट के लिए पढ़ रहे हैं, उसमें आपको कुछ आनंद नहीं मिल रहा है और आपका फेवरेट गाना सुनाई दे रहा है, तो आपका मन अपने आप वो मधुर गाना के तरफ खींचा जाता है, जैसे जल में चलने वाली नाव को वायु हर लेती है. Okay, so another point is we have studied, so the senses function on different levels. On gross level, they enjoy the superficial transient joys of the objects, like going to movies or parties or meeting people, etc. That's okay. There is no doubt that you get some happiness. But when the senses function at the subtler levels, they enjoy more because there is more happiness in the subtler levels of creation. Just as we see in our daily experience of meditation, when you begin meditation, you may have too many thoughts, and as the mind settles down, there is more calmness, there is more silence, and that state is more pleasing to the mind. So it is clear that there is greater happiness in subtler levels of creation, and that is where the mind is taking us as we are progressing in meditation. So स्थित प्रज्ञ के इंद्रियां अंतर्मुखी होते हैं. जब इंद्रियां अंतर्मुख होते हैं तो मन शांत हो जाता है. मन शांत होने से आनंद मिलता है. इसलिए श्री कृष्ण भगवान कहते हैं, हे अर्जुन, जिस पुरुष की इंद्रियों के विषयों से शांत होते हैं और सब प्रकार निग्रह की हुई है, उसी की बुद्धि स्थिर है. इसी को कहते हैं स्थित प्रज्ञ. Okay, so now we will begin the study of the last 4 verses of chapter 2. So we'll be completing chapter 2 today. Mataji will cover the first 2 clubbed together, and then I will do the last 2 verses. Madhavi?
Thank you, Hemaji. May I request the Vedic Pandits to chant verses 69 and 70, please?
ॐ या निशा सर्वभूतानां तस्यां जागाति संयमी यस्यां जाग्राति भूतानि सा निशा पश्यतो मुनेः आपूर्यमाणामचलप्रतिष्ठां समुद्रमापः प्रविशन्ति यद्वत् कामायं प्रवशन्ति सर्वे सशान्तिमाप्नोति न कामकामी.
Thank you. Pooja ji, can we have the display of verse 69? Anita ji, can we have the English reading of verse 69, please?
Jai Gurudev. That which is night for all beings, therein the self-controlled is awake. That wherein beings are awake is night for the sage who sees. Sage, Muni, not necessarily a recluse, but rather a man of calm, far-seeing prudence and wisdom. Sees means sees the truth. Here Shri Krishna Bhagavan shows Arjuna the difference between the state of the ignorant man and that of the realized. One exists in darkness, the other in light. Or the night of the one is the day of the other. For the realized man is awake in the light of the self, while the ignorant is awake in the light of the senses. The realized man is awake in the light of absolute bliss, the ignorant in the light of the relative joys of perishable nature. Shri Krishna Bhagavan said that the light in which the established intellect behaves is not perceived by the ignorant, and the light in which the ignorant behaves is looked upon as darkness by the enlightened. Jai.
Thank you, Hemaji. Himabindu, may I request you to go ahead reading the English version for the 70th verse?
Yes, Mataji. Jai Gurudev. He whom all desires enter as waters, enter the ever full and unmoved sea attains peace, and not he who cherishes desires. When a man has risen to this lasting state of consciousness, the state where his self is detached from and not overshadowed by the relative states of life, waking, dreaming, and deep sleep, then his state is like that of an ever full and steady ocean. This, being the state of absolute bliss, is the goal of all desires in life. Desires arise from a particular want, from a lack of happiness. The mind is ever seeking a field of greater happiness. Thus, desires are always flowing towards eternal bliss consciousness as rivers to the ocean. Once bliss consciousness is permanently attained, desires have served their purpose and therefore cravings do not arise. This is a state of true contentment, a state of lasting peace. Sri Krishna Bhagavan says that lasting peace is never achieved by one who is not complete in himself and still craves worldly things. However, this does not mean that in order to attain peace in life, a man should cease to desire and to aspire. It is the desires that lead a man to greater happiness and to fulfillment, not the control and killing of desires, which has been widely advocated through the ages. This verse too has been wrongly interpreted with a consequent increase in dullness and inefficiency, particularly in the lives of young people in India. The undue stress laid on fatalism has proved disastrous for their physical well-being and for the material progress of society. Thinking that to desire and to aspire will not lead to peace, people begin to abstain from enterprise and cease to open the gates of progress. This is simply a wrong understanding of Sri Krishna Bhagavan's teaching. The verse shows Arjuna very clearly that the self-awareness of the realized is like an ocean which will accept any stream of desires and will satisfy it without being affected. The ocean accepts the river as it comes and denies no stream rushing in it. Its status remains unaffected. Such is the state of established intellect which cannot be affected by anything. It is a state of eternal peace. The following verse gives the technique of maintaining such a permanent state of peace in the midst of activity. Jai Gurudev.
Thank you, Bindu. Thank you, Bindu. Jai Gurudev, may I request Mataji to give the comments for verses 69 and 70, please? Mataji, you're on mute, Mataji.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Jai Gurudev. Thank you so much, Hemaji and Madhavi. It is such a wonderful thing, that this second chapter is going to have a grand, completion today. And Hemaji will bring the completion. I will just, address these two verses. It is a very grand chapter, really, because it is Sankhya Yoga, and it is the soul of the whole Bhagavad Gita. And the journey of understanding the relative consciousness and understanding the absolute consciousness and the being, and then being the Brahman, because Brahman is not a state. The 7 states of consciousness are different from Brahman, because the 7 states of consciousness can be changing and evolving further until you go to the unity consciousness. But Brahman is different. Brahman is not a it is not a state. It is an established consciousness, and where it has attained this permanent Advaita, non-duality, eternally, and where the absolute and the relative come together and exist as one, where the absolute consciousness is the um, um, more of the experience, or the self is the experience. No, I'm losing words here. The experience of the self is continuous in Brahman, and the experience of the knowledge of the relative is also not lost in the Brahman state. So all the other states, they keep changing and evolving, but Brahman is the established Advaita, or the non-duality. Now here, coming to these two verses, I will read again. That which is night for all beings, therein the self-control is awake. When all beings are awake, it is night for the sage who sees. He whom all desires enter as water, enter the ocean, attains peace, and not he who cherishes desires. So here there are important concepts here which need to be clearly understood. One is the one who is self-controlled and also enlightened, who is awake within himself, and who is also a sage. So then there is the unenlightened, or who is only in the waking, dreaming, and sleeping state, who sees the night as the tamas, or the darkness. Then there is in the verse number 70, again, we go back into the desires and the level of the peace that is needed, to be established in order to be in a situation where the desires are not of individual origin, but of the cosmic purpose, or the Loka Kalyanam. And then this being how he cherishes the desires. So let's get into this discussion a little bit further. When I first read the Bhagavad Gita in 1981 or so, I think that was the first time I read. And I could not really understand a lot of it, Maharishi Ji was saying, transcendental consciousness. Because if you read the whole of the Bhagavad Gita, Maharishi Ji starts only at transcendental consciousness. And for somebody, who has not had the full experience of the transcendental consciousness, then you keep wondering, how Maharishi Ji just talks about, transcend, and then you become the transcendent, and you are experiencing the transcendental consciousness. It is only after I had my Nirvikalpa Samadhi, then I had clearly understood why Maharishi Ji is saying, and how Maharishi Ji's nervous system is very different from everyone else's. And he would close his eyes, and then he would just be transcendental and experience the transcendent. Just like, Adi Shankaracharya, when he went, when he stood in front of his guru, he just spoke the Mahavakyas. And then Adi Shankara was fully enlightened, and he became the Brahman. Just with the listening to the Vakyas. And that never happens to everybody, right? So in the same way, Maharishi Ji, when he would just close his eyes, he would be the transcendent. And so until that experience comes, I think, it would be difficult for anyone to understand what is purely the transcendental consciousness. But the beauty of this whole Bhagavad Gita Maharishi Ji has brought is, he has brought, everything that is beyond the normal waking, dreaming, and sleeping states. The normal senses, the normal individual mind, the normal individual intellect. He has taken one beyond this, and then given the whole knowledge in these 6 chapters of how one can go from the individual status and attain the Brahman. And actually, in the 2nd chapter, all of this is given. This 2nd chapter gives it in a, in elaborate way, how one can go from individual mind to the cosmic mind, how one can go from individual intellect to the cosmic intellect, and how one can attain, from the beyond the waking, from the transcendental consciousness to the cosmic consciousness and beyond all these 7 states, be the Brahman. So this is the beauty of this whole aspects of this. And here when Bhagavan says, he says that which is night for all beings, therein the self-controlled is awake. Because in the cosmic consciousness, this fully awake state is established. Without any doubt, this fully awake state is established. You know, you don't lose it, whether you are waking or dreaming or sleeping. The self is always there. And so it is never, you never feel like you are really asleep. You never feel the darkness of the night. And so for the enlightened, one feels that one is fully awake within oneself. And there is no, actually, it is not the night of the normal human person, individual. And so the sage, then, you know, the sage is the one who is the Muni, not necessarily a recluse, Maharishi says, but who has attained this union and gained this cosmic consciousness and beyond. So he sees the others and he thinks, you know, I am now fully awake within myself, and the others are just sleeping in tamas. The self is not visible to them. They are not, you know, they are not aware of the self. So he thinks, you know, they are in darkness. Now, so here again, Maharishi says, realize man is awake in the light of the self, while the ignorant is awake in the light of the senses. So here the light of self is the light of being, which is, you know, never changing phenomena. And the ignorant is awake in the light of the senses. This light of the senses is the ever changing phenomena, continuously changing phenomena. And Bhagavan further continues, he whom all desires enter as waters enter the ocean, attains peace, and not he who cherishes desires. So in this context, I just want to say, if you look at the whole of the consciousness, there is the relative consciousness, there is the absolute consciousness, and there is the junction. There is the relative consciousness, the absolute consciousness, and the junction. So the transcending, when it is gone through the whole of the relative, you have transcended the whole of the relative, then there is the junction where, you know, everything changes from the relative. It changes at that junction. And then there is a huge, it is like a very big shift when it goes from the junction to the absolute. It is like, I would say, you know, it's like earth-shattering experience. When, you know, from one goes from the complete relative to the complete absolute. And so this bliss is also like that. The bliss is changing, the peace is changing, the silence is changing as you move into the deeper fields of the relative consciousness. And when you enter the junction point, then the bliss is really flowing. It is very blissful. And you feel, you know, there is more and more silence there, and there is more peace. But it is flowing. But when you go into the absolute, the bliss completely changes, because here there is the fullness of the ocean. The bliss becomes very full. There is no movement, absolutely. There is no wave at all. There is no wave. There is nothing. It is full, so full. It is so full that nothing else can be put into it. And in this fullness, then what is this fullness? This fullness of this bliss, fullness of the contentment, fullness of the peace, fullness of the silence. So in this, why does one want to have any desires? Where is the space for desires? Where is the space for the desires? There's no space for desires here, because you're already full. You're already that. It is only when you come to the junction, then, you know, the bliss starts flowing. And then the desires, other things, you know, keep happening. So understanding this, then the desires are only flowing. The desires are only coming up and flowing towards happiness, because they want some fulfillment. They want to gain more happiness. They want to gain more and more. But once has come to the fullness already and has experienced this being and be the being, then the desires have come to an end. They will come up again, you know, when you come out of this, you know, pure transcendental consciousness, then they will start coming up again. But with repeated experience, there is infusion of this absolute into the relative, more and more infusion of the absolute into the relative, until it becomes the cosmic consciousness, where the self and the non-self become completely separate. So in that context, then there is a shift in the mind. The individual mind becomes cosmic mind, and the individual desires become cosmic desires, and the individual intellect becomes cosmic intellect. So there is a whole big shift then. So all of it happens very naturally and spontaneously. And so Maharishi Ji gives an advice, a warning saying that, don't think that desire should not be there, and try to think, to abolish desires, stay away from desires and all that. So the best thing is policy is just to keep practicing what you're doing, do your sadhana, eat your sattvic food, read Bhagavad Gita, Ramayana every day, listen to Vishnu Sahasranamam as Mahima Ji said, and and keep that evolution going on, and keep that experience in that sadhana going on, and see how the desires settle. That is the most logical and practical thing. And so finally, I will end up saying that the status of Brahman, that is the state of the eternal life, and here the activity or the silence of relative existence belongs to the absolute being. So here in this state, a man's life is divine life. A man's life is divine life. And divine life is found in this individual life. And the absolute being is on the human level. And although you feel, there are some limitations of this, the body and the environment and the circumstances, the absolute freedom is felt, because when you have the experience of the self within you all the time, the freedom that you're not bound to your desires or their results, or you're not attached to the results, and that is not creating the impressions, then you become truly free. And this is the Jivan Mukta status, which can be attained only in this body and in this life. And this is being the greatest gift of Bhagavan Krishna and Maharishi Ji today, saying that everyone can become a Jivan Mukta, everyone can be a Brahman, everyone can be liberated, and everyone can be in absolute bliss and not lose the sight of Atma, and then be fulfilled, that the purpose for which you take birth has been fulfilled completely. Jai Gurudev, Loka Samasta Sukhino Bhavantu.
Jai Gurudev Mataji, I will be doing scientific research for verse 69 and 70. And then
Please
I
do.
have a few questions to ask you. But first, I'll do the scientific research. Now, as you have rightly said, and here also it is proven in the scientific research that the person who is self-controlled is awake. So when you're awake, which Maharishi says is the greater wakefulness through Maharishi transcendental meditation. And what happens then? You are awake because you're practicing a very, very unique, simple, effortless technique called transcendental meditation. And it is that key which helps us to reach that level of absolute bliss in which there is mental clarity, increased wakefulness, and higher states of restfulness. And when there are higher states of restfulness, we have seen that this is possible only in a man who is enlightened and self-controlled, and who understands that that intellect keeps him away from the darkness of the night. That means he remains enlightened throughout the day and night. There is no night for him. He's awake in the night also because he is enlightened. And this is only possible when you have fulfilled happiness, and this fulfilled happiness and this development of the self and evolution of the self takes place through Maharishi transcendental meditation. And then we have seen that there is greater independence, there is greater self-sufficiency because we have reached that level of restful alertness and that level of Sahita where we understand the the self-interacting dynamics of the knower, known, and the knowing. So this scientific research goes exactly how Mataji has described verse 69 and 70. Now, my question is, Mataji,
Mhm.
when we read Maharishi says, seek the highest. So does he refer to unity consciousness or to Brahman?
It is Brahman.
It
Because
is Brahman.
you have to move beyond the 7 states to
Okay.
establish.
So what?
Because even in the unity consciousness, there is a very tiny gap. There is a very tiny gap. It is I and the infinite. It is I.
Right.
In the cosmic consciousness, it is self and non-self.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
God consciousness, it is God, and then it is God, and then this self. That means
Right.
the non-self has risen to divinity, and then there is the self. Okay, and then in the
Right.
unity consciousness, there is the self is always there. Okay, what is changing is the non-self. The non-self is
Right.
changing from cosmic to God, divine, and to the
And
infinite, and
unity.
where it feels it is infinite, not only divine but infinite. Okay, because in
Right.
this context, even a manifest God has some limitation.
Right, Mataji. Thank you so
Yeah.
much. And one more thing. You said that there is no evolution in Brahman.
No,
Right?
there is the evolution in Brahman continues, because you see, you're dealing with a topic which is infinitely infinite. You're dealing with
Okay.
something, which is infinitely infinite and all pervading and continuously expanding. So
Okay.
even in the Brahman, there is expansion going on, but the non-duality is firmly established.
Right. Right.
The
So we
non-duality
take it. Right.
established.
So
That you
we
are the
understand.
self, and there is nothing outside you. Everything that is there is only
Is
within
it?
yourself.
Oh,
That is established. But the expansion continues into being a seer or something else, where you see, when you look at all the rishis, the amount of knowledge or the siddhis or the omniscient, omnipresent, omnipotent qualities that they have had keep varying with each individuals, even the Saptarishis, Maharishis. Okay,
okay.
so that is expanding. Those things are expanding, but this non-duality is firmly established in the Brahman.
Right. So if we have to explain to someone, like I have to
Yeah.
take a class, so
Yeah.
one line would be that non-duality is not there then at the level of Brahman consciousness. Am I
Is there
right?
non-duality? Yeah,
Yeah.
non-duality. It is non-dual. Duality is not there in Brahman.
Thank
Duality
you,
is
Mataji.
not there in Brahman. It is
Thank
only
you,
one self.
Mataji.
Only one
Thank you very
self,
much.
the relative and the absolute together.
Thank you very much. Thank you very
Yeah,
much.
Jai Gurudev.
Jai Gurudev.
Jai Gurudev.
Any other questions from the participants? Okay. So moving on further, may I request the Vedic Pandits to please recite verse number 71, and Pooja ji, can we have you display the verse 71?
विहाय कामान्य शरमान् पुमां शरितनिष्प्रह निर्ममो निरहङ्कार शशान्तिमधिगच्छति.
When a man acts without longing, having relinquished all desires, free from the sense of I and mine, he attains to peace. Having relinquished all desires does not mean that The mind no longer entertains any desires, because this would not be possible for a living being. It means that the self has been realized as detached from activity, as was made clear in the commentary on verse 55. Because a man in this state acts while remaining free from the sense of I and mine, it is quite natural that activity does not in any way disturb his state of established intellect. He has gained that eternal freedom in life where the status of one's being remains unaffected by any activity. The following verse throws more light on this. To have relinquished all desires means to have gained transcendental divine consciousness permanently. This happens through meditation. When, after meditation, the mind comes out infused with the transcendental divine nature, the individual acts in the world, and this action is quite naturally free from the narrowness of petty individuality, from the short-sightedness of selfish attachment, which previously held him imprisoned. Everything moves according to the cosmic plan, and although the individual ego continues to function, the action is that of divine intelligence working through the individual who is living cosmic existence. Such a life is a very natural expression of cosmic intelligence in the world. It represents the state of eternal freedom here on earth. Nothing in the world is able to overshadow or disturb this state, because it is inclusive of all that lies between two extremes of life: the transcendental divine nature of the absolute and human nature in relative existence. Jai Gurudev. May I request Hemaji to comment on verse 71, please?
Yeah. So, excuse me. It's made very clear in this shloka that, quote, relinquishing all desires, end of quote, does not mean that one does not have any desires, because that is impossible. Even Maharishi had a desire for world peace. So, how do we understand that when in the shloka it says one should relinquish all desires? What it means is that when one is a realized self, then one experiences self as separate from activity. He is detached from the activity. Self is different, activity is different. And in such a situation, the desires do not disturb the state of established intellect. It is like they're on the surface. And so they do not overshadow the being, and they do not disturb the being. So that's what it means. So in this shloka, 3 words have been used. One is nispruha, nirmama, and nirahankara. So let us see what they mean. First, let's understand what nispruha means. So spruha means, let's say you have a desire, you want something. When you get it, you are happy. If you don't get it, you're sad. That is spruha. But if you stay balanced, whether you get what you want or not, that is nispruha. So that thing that you didn't get something doesn't bother you. So that state is called as nispruha. And with regards to this, there is a very beautiful Maharishi quote that I want to share. Maharishi said, quote, "When we take a stand in self, we have accomplished the goal of fulfilling all desires. That is, experience supreme happiness, whether the desire is fulfilled or not." End of quote. Isn't that beautiful? You are in a state of consciousness where you have that fullness always, and doesn't matter whether the desires are fulfilled or not, you still have that happiness. So this is the state of consciousness we all are going to reach as we rise in consciousness. So now let us see what nirmama means. In the ordinary life, in ignorance, one thinks that his family, his house, his wealth, etc., they belong to him. They are mine. And when one goes beyond that possessive feeling that this is mine, that is mine, it is nirmama. So this should be understood very clearly. This does not mean that you don't love your family. It only means that you're not too attached to them and you give due attention. That means whatever attention you need to give, not too much and not too little. So that is nirmama. And the third one is nirahankara. Once again, in ignorance, one thinks that his mind and body are Atma. It is called Dehabhimanam. He does not have the experience of Atma as being separate from the mind and activity like we do. So when he does something, he thinks that he's doing it. But in reality, we know that it is the three gunas that are performing all the activity. So when you go beyond that, I'm doing this, I'm working, I'm eating, I'm doing this particular thing. So when you go beyond that that is nirahankara. So such a sthita prajna's actions are naturally not selfish actions. Everything he does is according to the divine cosmic plan. His individual ego continues. It's not that individual ego goes away, it continues. But what he's doing is it's God's work. And his actions are selfless actions. He's not doing it for his personal benefit. He does things for the benefit of the people around him, society, and the world. And at the same time, he's happy doing all those things. There is no pinch there. It is this overflowing love in him that makes him function from that level, because he's fully content with his life. That love overflows, that contentment is there. Now he begins to think of others and helping others. And whatever he does, it does not disturb or overshadow his Atma. He's always balanced and peaceful inside. So now I'll say in Hindi, इस श्लोक में स्थित प्रज्ञ पुरुष कामना को किस प्रकार आचरण करता है, ये बतलाई जाती है। वह संपूर्ण कामना रहित होते हैं और उनका त्याग कर देते हैं। इसका अर्थ ये नहीं होता है कि उनका कोई कामना नहीं होता, क्योंकि ये असंभव है। महर्षि जी को भी विश्व शांति की इच्छा थी। तो इसका सही अर्थ ये है कि उनके कर्म और कामना उनके आत्मा से भिन्न है। इस कारण उनके आत्मा पर कामनाओं का असर नहीं पड़ता, उससे वो विचलित नहीं होते हैं। और ये श्लोक में 3 शब्द के प्रयोग किए गए थे, निरहंकार, निर्मम, निस्पृह। इसका अर्थ क्या है वो समझने के प्रयास करेंगे। साधारण अज्ञानी मनुष्य का आत्माभिमान रहता है, जिस कारण वे शरीर को अपना स्वरूप मानता है, अपने को शरीर से भिन्न नहीं समझते। अतएव शरीर के सुख दुख से ही सुखी या दुखी होते हैं। उस देहाभिमान का नाम अहंकार है। उससे सर्वथा रहित हो जाना, यही निरहंकार हो जाना है। और फिर दूसरी बात यह है निर्मम। ये क्या होता है? अज्ञान में मनुष्य सोचता है कि उसके बंधु बांधव, गृह, धन, इन सबको अपना समझता है। इसी भावना का नाम ममता है और इससे सर्वथा रहित हो जाना निर्ममा है। इसका अर्थ ये नहीं है कि वह अपने पत्नी पुत्र से प्यार नहीं करते। सही बात तो ये है कि वे पहले से अधिक प्यार करते, परंतु इतना जुड़ा हुआ नहीं रहते कि पुत्री कॉलेज में जाती है तो माँ बाप रोने लगते हैं। वो पुत्री कॉलेज से घर आए जब संतुष्ट होते हैं, और जब संतुलित रहते हैं, बैलेंस रहते हैं, तो क्या होता? पुत्री कॉलेज जाती है तो वो भी जाती है तो भी संतुष्ट रहते हैं, घर में रहते हैं तो भी संतुष्ट रहते हैं। तो इसको कहते हैं निर्ममा। वो बेटी से प्यार करते हैं, वो बेटी जब आती है तो संतुष्ट होते हैं, परंतु वो जाने से इतने दुखी नहीं होते हैं कि रोने लगते हैं। तो इसी को कहते हैं निर्ममा। इसको अंग्रेजी में बोलते हैं नॉन अटैचमेंट। अब ये देखेंगे निस्पृह क्या होता है। किसी अनुकूल वस्तु का मिलने या नहीं मिलने से मन में जो सुखी या दुखी भाव होता है, इसको कहते हैं स्पृह। जब मनुष्य इससे परे हो जाते हैं और अनुकूल वस्तु का मिलने या न मिलने की परिस्थिति में भी संतुलित रहते हैं, तो निस्पृह कहते हैं। तो इस प्रकार अहंकार, ममता और स्पृह से रहित होकर केवल लोक संग्रह के लिए कर्म करते हैं, वह सेल्फिश नहीं होते हैं। ऐसे स्थित प्रज्ञ ही परम शांति और परब्रह्म परमात्मा की प्राप्ति होती है। तो अब मैं अनीता जी से अनुरोध करती हूँ कि साइंटिफिक रिसर्च के बारे में हमें बताएं।
Gee, Hema ji, is Madhavi going to do it or I'll do it now? Madhavi?
Sorry, yeah. Madhavi is going to do it. I forgot.
Yes.
No, it's all right. It's all right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Madhavi,
I
go
will
ahead.
be going to, yes. Jai Gurudev. Coming to the scientific research of verse 71, the main point of this verse, which points that when a man acts without longing, having relinquished all desires, free from the sense of I and mine, he attains to peace. This has been scientifically verified, and it shows that the regular practitioners of transcendental meditation are always happy, content, and satisfied. This is basically because they do not have any attachments with the work that they are doing. And whatever they do, this is reflected in they having a balanced mind, a balanced mood. There is no wavering of the mind, and this is naturally expressed when we look at their moral, ethical, and social selves, because there is a lot of satisfaction when they go ahead with whatever they are doing, whatever activity they are doing. So once again, this has been scientifically validated that Maharishi ji has blessed us with a wonderful technique of transcendental meditation, which is an easy, effortless, and natural technique, which is, leading us from a state of spruha to nispruha, a state where we have a lot of mamata to a state of nirmama, and from a state where there is ahankara to a state of nirahankara. Jai Gurudev. Do we have any questions at this for the verse 71, please? Okay. May I request the Vedic Pandits to chant verse 72. Verse 72 of chapter 2. Thank you.
जी दीदी मैं करूं?
Ji.
ओम ऐसा ब्राह्मी स्थिता पार्थ नैनं प्राप्य विमुह्यति स्थित्वास्य मन्तकालेऽपि ब्रह्म निर्वाणमिच्छति.
This is the state of Brahman, O Partha. Having attained it, a man is not deluded, established in that even at the last moment, he attains eternal freedom in the divine consciousness. The state of the life described in the previous verse says, Shri Krishna Bhagavan is the state of cosmic consciousness. If a man is to attain to this state, it is necessary for him to gain stability of self-consciousness in the midst of activity. This entails culturing the nervous system, the seat of consciousness, in such a way that it becomes capable of maintaining self-consciousness, which in its nature is transcendental. Along with the waking, dreaming, or sleeping states of consciousness, the process of refining the nervous system is a delicate one and takes its own time, depending upon the various factors of individual life. When the mind transcends during transcendental meditation, the metabolism reaches its lowest point. So does the process of breathing, and the nervous system gains a state of restful alertness, which on the physical level corresponds to the state of bliss consciousness or transcendent being. In order that the consciousness of the waking state may be maintained along with the transcendental bliss consciousness, it is essential for the nervous system not to lose this state of restful alertness corresponding to bliss consciousness. At the same time, the nervous system should maintain a metabolic rate corresponding to the activity taking place in the waking state. For this to come about, regular and continued practice of such meditation as leads to transcendental consciousness is necessary. This has to be followed by activity, because activity after meditation brings an infusion of transcendental being into the nature of the mind, and through it into all aspects of one's life in the relative field. With the constant practice of meditation, this infusion continues to grow, and when it is full grown, cosmic consciousness will have been attained. Once this state is attained, to fall from it is impossible. It holds transcendental consciousness intact in the field of all relative states, waking, dreaming, and deep sleep. Thus, in the state of Brahman, the state of eternal life, the activity or the silence of relative existence belongs to the absolute being. Having reached this state, a man's life is really the expression of divine life. The divine life is found in the individual life, the absolute being on the human level, eternal freedom within the limitations of individuality, time, space, and causation. It would be wrong to estimate that the state of cosmic consciousness in a man by anything that he displays in the field of faction, because this state accepts every activity, great or small, at the same time retains complete stillness. His state cannot in principle be judged by what he does. There are no outer signs of a man who has risen to the state of Brahman. Those seekers of truth who have accepted a life of renunciation naturally continue to abstain from all activities of life, even when they attain cosmic consciousness. This is due to their long established habit of non indulgence in activity. In the same way, when men of the world, actively engaged in many phases of life, reach the state of cosmic consciousness through yoga, they continue to act mainly from force of habit. But whether involved in activity or leading a quiet life, a soul evolved to this cosmic state is eternally contented. This state is ever the same, whether the mind is active in the waking or dreaming state or inactive in deep sleep. It is a state of eternal liberation during life here on earth. Shri Krishna Bhagavan's word, even at the last moment, provide a firm assurance that the fulfillment of life's purpose will be achieved through the teaching of this chapter. Arjuna has been given all that he needs to enable him to rise to eternal freedom in divine consciousness. Thus, in the Upanishads of the glorious Bhagavad Gita, in the science of the Absolute, in the scripture of the Yoga, in the dialogue between Sri Krishna Bhagavan and Arjuna, ends the second chapter, enlightened the Yoga of Knowledge, Sankhya Yoga. Jai Gurudev.
Thank you, Anita ji. May I request Hema ji to comment on the last verse of chapter 2?
Yeah. So, what we have discussed in the previous several verses is a state of Sthita Prajna. That is Jivan Mukta, Sanskrita, and it's also called as cosmic consciousness. And for this to happen, what we do is TM, AM, PM. That is our slogan. So that's one thing. And in between AM and PM, TM, what we do is we do activity. Whatever you do. Students go to school or college. And if you're working, you go to work. Housewife works in the house, whatever. So this activity is also important because this brings out inner divinity into your mind and through it into all aspects of your life in the relative field. So once this state is reached, a fall from it is impossible. So you have risen to the state of Sthita Prajna and you do not fall from that state. So that's why it said, Esha Brahmi Sthiti Partha Nainam Prapya Vimuhyati. So number one, you don't fall from that. And number two, you're not deluded anymore. So we'll get to that point in a second. So once you reach this divine state, the divine life is found on the individual level and one enjoys freedom. So freedom from what? You're not in a prison, but it's like coming out of prison. All the limitations are binding to us, but we get freedom from the limitations of individual life. And this state this state of life accepts every activity, big or small, and still retains inner stillness, peace, and silence. So that stillness, that silence is there all the time with you, 24/7, 24 hours of the day, 7 days a week. It's always there with you. And then he experiences God inside him always. So that stillness is there. And Bible says, quote, "Be still and know that I'm God." End of quote. So that inner silence is there, and it's a very beautiful feeling. And it happens here in this lifetime. It's not that, it's going to happen in next life, in this lifetime. That's what Maharishi is telling us, because he gave us this very beautiful technique. And then one enjoys eternal freedom in divine consciousness. So a minute ago, I said that such people are not deluded. There is no moha. So what is moha? It is not knowing what Ishvara is and what this samsara is about. What is my connection with Ishvara? What is my connection with this samsara? He doesn't know what the purpose of life is. What is his dharma? What is he doing? Why he is doing? So this is moha. And once such a man begins sadhana and gains knowledge and experiences inner happiness, that inner divinity, that Ishvara, God, is within himself, then that moha is gone. So once you reach the state of sthita prajna, you don't have that moha anymore. So we do sadhana, and just now I said, we get to the state of sthita prajna, we get enlightened in this lifetime. But just in case one is not able to complete his sadhana in this lifetime, even then one may attain Brahmi Sthiti in the last moment of the life. Because what happens is, at the time of death, if one thinks of God, then one attains moksha. This is explained beautifully in chapter 8. And so this depends upon how much yoga bala one has. The more sadhana you do, more yoga bala you get. But for someone who doesn't do enough sadhana, it is hard to remember God at the time of transition. So even if one remembers God at the time of prana leaving the body, one attains moksha. That's what it means. So I'll say in Hindi now. यहाँ तक स्थित प्रज्ञ पुरुष की वर्णन किया गया था। वह ब्रह्म को प्राप्त पुरुष की स्थिति है तथा अहंकार, स्पृहा, कामना रहित होकर निश्चल भाव से सच्चिदानंद घन परमात्मा के स्वरूप में नित्य निरंतर निमग्न रहना ही उस स्थिति को प्राप्त होना है। इस स्थिति को प्राप्त होकर स्थित प्रज्ञ कभी मोहित नहीं होता। तो ये मोह क्या है? साधारण मनुष्य यह विचार नहीं करता कि ईश्वर क्या है, ये जगत क्या है, मैं कौन हूं, कहां से आया हूं, मेरा क्या कर्तव्य है। ऐसे विषयों का यथार्थ ज्ञान न होना ही मोह है। पर जब वे भावातीत ध्यान से आत्मानंद का अनुभव कर लेते हैं, ऐसे विषयों का ज्ञान पाता है, तब उसका यह मोह नष्ट हो जाता है। और श्री कृष्ण भगवान कह रहे हैं कि जो मनुष्य साधना करते, वे जीवित अवस्था में ही इस स्थिति को प्राप्त कर लेता है। वे ब्रह्मानंद को प्राप्त जीवन मुक्त है। पर जो साधना पूरी नहीं कर पाए, मरण काल में उनके अंतःकरण में ईश्वर का ही नाम आता है और वे ईश्वर में लीन हो जाते हैं। तो ये है स्थित प्रज्ञ का अंतिम श्लोक। And from all this discussion, we have seen the glory of reaching the state of sthita prajna. We get established in God consciousness and experience inner happiness and silence all the time. So I'll stop here. Madhavi, you can please give the scientific research and then we'll take questions.
Thank you, Hemaji. Moving on to the scientific research for this verse, it has been proved that the regular practitioners of transcendental meditation, they always operate from the higher states of consciousness, which is very evident in how they compose themselves in all situations. They are very clear in their thinking. All their thoughts are structured very orderly, and they exhibit a wholeness in their personality. This is because having attained or operating from that higher states of consciousness, they are not touched with any sorts of attachments or dualities. Jai Gurudev. Do we have any questions?
Maybe just to clear myself, it's not a question, just a little point of discussion. When you talk about silence, at the level of, at the grosser level also that we continue to maintain, do I also understand that this is the inner silence and dynamism?
Yes, that inner silence comes onto the surface. So that's what is called as infusion of being. So that peace, that silence that is there at a deeper levels, it comes on to the surface and the whole being is permeated by that silence. So it comes into your mind, in senses. So no matter what you're doing, you feel silence inside. It's a very beautiful feeling. I'm sure you, all of you had that feeling, that, so much is going on around you, but still you're feeling is silence inside.
Right. And the second point is, when we speak about attaining freedom, we also understand this is the freedom coming out from the boundaries of life.
Yes. So what happens, you experience the boundless. The boundaries may be there, but they are secondary. They do not bind you. So the value of boundless is infused into the boundaries.
Right.
And then you don't feel that constriction, like you're bound, somebody tied you up. So that tied up feeling is not there. You're free, like you're a free bird.
And the last question is, in your last verse, verse before that, when we were talking about individual ego, do we understand that individual ego works through the divine intelligence? When it works through the divine intelligence, then that is the level which does not disturb a person. And that is the level where Maharishi says that we attain contentment and happiness.
Yes. Correct statement, Anita ji.
Okay. I just wanted to be, when I take a class, I will first be very sure exactly what I. Thank you so much, Hemaji.
Yes, that point you just said, the individual is in tune with the cosmic intelligence.
Right.
That is the key point that we all need to understand. That's the most important thing. That is yoga, that is union. The individual mind uniting with the cosmic mind. Yoga does not mean stretching exercises. Yoga means union, and union means what is, for union, there have to be two things. So here two things are, Jivatma is one, Paramatma is another one. So this Jivatma unites with Paramatma. That is yoga, that is union. That is why Bhagavad Gita is called as Yoga Shastra. Shastra, a scripture that gives you the knowledge of yoga, that is how to unite with God. That is the purpose of our life. That's why we came into this world. That is the purpose. So to fulfill that purpose, you need a technique. And that technique is transcendental meditation. And once we reach that state, the purpose of life is accomplished. Okay. So we have 15 minutes now. Any more questions? Otherwise, we will move on. So 5 minutes of meditation and 5 minutes of chanting.
Okay. So may I request everybody to sit comfortably, and now we will have a short meditation. Jai Gurudev. Jai Gurudev. Jai Gurudev. Jai Gurudev. May we request the Vedic Pandits to kindly chant verses 37 to 72 of chapter 2.
Jai Gurudev.
Jai Gurudev.
Om Shri Paramatmane Namaha. अथ द्वितीयोऽध्यायः हतो वा प्राप्स्यसि स्वर्गं जित्वा वा भोक्ष्यसे महीम् तस्मादुत्तिष्ठ कौन्तेय युद्धाय कृतनिश्चयः शमदुःखे शमे कृत्वा लाभालाभौ जयाजयौ ततो युद्धाय युज्यस्व नैवं पापमवाप्स्यसि एष ते विहता सांख्ये बुद्धिर्योगेति मां शृणु बुद्धयादियुक्तो यया पार्थ कर्मबन्धं प्रहास्यसि नेह विक्रामनाशोऽस्ति प्रत्यावायो न विद्यते स्वल्पमप्यस्य धर्मस्यात्रायते महतो भयात् व्यवसायात्मिका बुद्धिर्रेकेः कुरु नन्दनान् बहुशाखा ह्यनन्ताश्च बुद्धयो व्यवसायिनां य इमां पुष्पितां वाचं प्रवदन्त्यापि पश्चितः वेदवादरतः पार्थानन्यदस्तीति वादिनः कामात्मानः स्वर्गपरा जन्मकर्म फलप्रदां क्रियाविशेषबहुलां भोगैश्वर्यगतिं प्रति भोगैश्वर्यप्रसक्तानां तया परहित चेतसां व्यवसायात्मिका बुद्धि समाधाउ न विधीयते त्रैगुण्य विषय सत्तोस्थो नरकयोक्षेम आत्मवान् यावानर्थ उत्पादे सर्वथा संप्लुकोदके तावान् सर्वेषु भेदेषु ब्रह्मणस्य विजानतः कर्मण्येवाधिकारस्ते मा फलेषु कदाचन मा कर्मफल हेतुर्भूर्मा ते संगोऽस्त्वकर्मणि योगस्था कुरु कर्माणि संगं त्यक्त्वा धनञ्जय सिद्ध्या सिद्ध्यो समो भूत्वा समत्वं योगयुज्यते दूरेणायोरहं कर्म बुद्धयोग धनञ्जय बुद्धौ शरणमन्विच्छा कृपणाः फलहेतवः बुद्धयुक्तो जहातीह उभे सुकृत दुष्कृते तस्माद्योगाय युज्यस्व योगः कर्मसु कौशलं कर्मजं बुद्धयुक्ता हि फलं त्यक्त्वा मनीषिणः जन्मबन्धविनिर्मुक्ता पदं गच्छन्तः वयम् यदा ते मोहकलिलं बुद्धिर्व्यतितरिष्यति तदा गन्तासि निर्वेदं श्रोतव्यस्य श्रुतस्य च श्रुतिविप्रातिपन्ना ते यदा स्थास्थिति निश्चला समाधावचला बुद्धिस्तदा योगमवाप्स्यसि अर्जुन उवाच स्थितप्रज्ञस्य का भाषा समाधिस्तस्य केशव स्थितिर्हि किं प्रभाषेता किमासीत प्रजेत किं श्रीभगवानुवाच प्रजहाति यदा कामान् सर्वान् पार्थ मनोगतान् आत्मन्नेवात्मना तुष्टा स्थितप्रज्ञास्तदोच्यते दुःखेष्वनुद्विनः सुखेषु विगतस्पृह वीतरागभयक्रोधा स्थितधीर्मुनि पृच्छते या सर्वत्र न विस्नेहस्तत्प्राप्य शुभाशुभम् नाभिनन्दति न दृष्टि तस्य प्रज्ञा प्रतिष्ठिता यदा संहरते चायं कूर्मोऽङ्गानीव सर्वशः इन्द्रियाणीन्द्रियार्थेभ्यस्तस्य प्रज्ञा प्रतिष्ठिता विषया विनिर्वर्तन्ते निराहारस्य देहिनः रसवर्जं रसोऽप्यस्य परं द्रष्टा निवर्तते यततो ह्यपि कौन्तेय पुरुषस्य विपश्चितः इन्द्रियाणि प्रमाथीनि हरन्ति प्रशभं मनः तानि शर्वाणि संयम्य युक्त आसीत मत्परः वसेहि यस्येन्द्रियाणि तस्य प्रज्ञा प्रतिष्ठिता ध्यायतो विषयान् पुंसः संगस्ते सुपजायते संगात् संजायते कामात् क्रोधो विजायते क्रोधात् भवति सम्मोहः सम्मोहात् स्मृतिविभ्रमः स्मृतिभ्रंशात् बुद्धिनाशो बुद्धिनाशात् प्रणश्यति रागद्वेषयुक्तैस्तु विषयानिन्द्रश्चरान् आत्मवैश्यर्विधेयात्मा प्रसादमधिगच्छति प्रसादे सर्वदुःखानां हानिरस्योपजायते प्रसन्नचेतसो ह्याशो बुद्धिपर्यवतिष्ठते नास्ति बुद्धिरयुक्तस्य न चायुक्तस्य भावना न चाभावयतः शान्तस्य कुतः सुखम् इन्द्रियाणां विचरतां यन्मनोनुविधीयते तदस्य हरति प्रज्ञां वायुर्नाममिमां वसि तस्मात् यस्या महाबाहो गृहीतानि सर्वशः इन्द्रियाणीन्द्रियार्थेभ्यस्तस्य प्रज्ञा प्रतिष्ठिता या निशा सर्वभूतानां तस्यां जागार्ति संयमी यस्यां जाग्रार्ति भूतानि सा निशा पश्यतो मुनेः आपूर्यमाणं प्रचलं प्रतिष्ठं समुद्रमापः प्रविशन्ति यद्वत् कामायं प्रविशन्ति सर्वे या शान्तिमाप्नोति न कामकामी ध्याय कामान्य सर्वान् पुमां सरति निष्प्रः निर्ममो निरहङ्कारः शान्तिमधिगच्छति एषा ब्राह्मी स्थिता पार्थ नैनं प्राप्य विमुह्यति स्थित्वा स्यामन्तकालेऽपि ब्रह्मनिर्वाणमृच्छति ओम तत्सदिति श्रीमद्भगवद्गीतासु उपनिषत्सु ब्रह्म विद्यायां योगशास्त्रे श्रीकृष्णार्जुन संवादे सांख्ययोगो नाम द्वितीयोऽध्यायः श्रीकृष्णार्पणमस्तु। ओम शांति शांति शांति।
Jai Gurudev. Do we have anybody who's celebrating their birthdays? Okay. So may I request the Vedic Pandits to go with the Shanti part, please?
हरि ओम द्यौः शान्तिरन्तरिक्षगुं शान्तिः पृथिवी शान्तिरापः शान्तिरोषधयः शान्तिः वनस्पतयः शान्तिर्विश्वे देवाः शान्ति ब्रह्म शान्तिः सर्वगुं शान्तिः शान्तिरेव शान्तिः क्षमा शान्तिरेधि यतो यतः शमीहसे ततो नो अभयं कुरु शन्नः कुरुप्रजाभ्यो भयन्नः पशुभ्यः ओम सुशान्तिर्भवतु। ओम शांति शांति शांति। जय गुरुदेव दीदी।
Jai Gurudev.
Thank you, Maharishi. Thank you all for joining. We had a nice session. We concluded the second chapter. Next week, we will be summarizing the second chapter. I would like to request all of you to come on videos now and say Jai Gurudev to Maharishi.
Jai Gurudev.
जय गुरुदेव दीदी।
Jai Gurudev. Sunita.
Ji.
Jai Gurudev. Hima. Bani ji. Naha. Usha. Nice to see you after a long time.
Jai Gurudev, ma'am.
Jai Gurudev. So, all right, we can end the meeting now. We'll meet next week, same time. Jai Gurudev.
Jai Gurudev.